Welcome to this panel, and as you were introduced, it's called Getting Macro with the Metaverse, Realism, Opportunity and Challenges. I personally love this title because it touches upon some of the elements that I, as a futurist, really think is extremely important, and that is the long-term perspective. So the term metaverse represents a new merge of our physical and virtual lives, and I believe that in this evolution, we will have to re-evaluate how we place a monetary value on our virtual presence and virtual assets like NFTs or avatar skins. So will physical assets continue to have more value to people than the virtual assets? Is the physical the only real reality? Since this is also called something about reality, right? This is something that we at the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, where I'm from, are diving a lot into. And we really see that this is something that is changing. So quickly to introduce myself, yes, I was also said, I'm Sofie Hvitved, and I'm a futurist and senior advisor at the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. So we have 50 years of diving into the futures and the different futures that we're going into. We're also, just a little bit so you know who we are, we're also knowledge partners here at the TechBBQ. So if you're interested in diving more into the different futures, you can actually meet us. A lot of my colleagues is around here, and we have a little booth in the matchmaking area. There we go. You can also actually participate in a competition of 4 seats on applied strategic foresight courses run by the Institute. So, and I can just say that maybe you are interested in this as well. So each seat has a value of 1,200 euro, and it's a great way to dive into the methodology that we're doing at the Institute. So go ahead and participate in that competition. But enough about us at the Institute and me. Because today I'm super excited to share the stage with 3 amazing experts who are going to share some perspectives on the metaverse. How might the metaverse affect the way we live and the way we work? What are the pros and cons, its potentials and its limits? And what implications does the development of the metaverse have on you as startups or investors? So we're going to talk about the metaverse, and we've been working quite intensively at the Institute with this as well. We have a white paper diving into the different futures because nobody knows what the metaverse is yet, right? So this is something that we're really going to look into. Fact is that the metaverse is still only on a very early stage. Think mid-90s when it comes to the development of the internet. So everything is new, it's unregulated, it's full of flaws, it's full of people trying to earn a quick buck. So what does this all mean? As smart technologies becomes even more omnipresent, a larger portion of our daily activities has moved online and is starting to merge into more immersive experiences, moving the interface from the flat screen into our environments. So blending our physical and virtual lives. So additionally, it opens up a new virtual economy in which all businesses must eventually think about their position and potential with virtual assets within the metaverse, from going direct to consumer to direct to avatar. So this is a move that we will all sort of have to be aware of. So how will that be adapted, and what are the challenges that we are facing? So let's hear from the panel. How do you define the metaverse, and what are the perspectives in your ways of? So let's start with you, Dan Burgar. Thank you very much for joining.
To me, it's the 3D internet. It's the next revolution of computing, and everything is going to move towards that in terms of the internet, in terms of computing, and it's really going to, allow us to dive into this new kind of world that we're building. So the metaverse is really kind of this next iteration of the internet.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you say. And easily put, I like to think about it that everything I do today online, I can do in 3D through virtual or augmented reality.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that is that in its pure form, I think we've considered, especially Neil Stephenson's book Snow Crash, who was credited with really using the term the first time in literature as a fully immersive virtual environment. But I think the definition has expanded, and it's what I believe that it's expanded to just the data layer that's going to live all around us. And that data layer is on a spectrum from augmented reality, where it's just a projection in your field of view, through mixed reality where the digital asset has context and is anchored to the real world all the way through to a fully immersive, controlled environment.
Exactly, and you have to know that these people have been working for a long time in this field and are really some of the main experts that are around. So we're really lucky to have you here. So some of the thing, like this session is called like going into the more macro. So we're going to go a little bit up and a little bit higher and look into the perspectives, right? But before we do that, in your opinion, is the metaverse already here? Yes or no?
That's a great question. I would say no. The form of the metaverse that we're going to see in the next few years, where it's going to really shift computing, it's really going to shape our daily lives and really change the way we work, it hasn't shown up yet. There's different facets of what will connect into the metaverse, like Sandbox, Decentraland, Roblox. But in terms of what the metaverse will look like in a few years, where it's going to be that 3D internet, and a lot of people think that there's going to be multiple metaverse. I actually think there's only going to be one, where it's going to be much like the internet, where it's all this kind of sort of web of 3D, storefronts or 3D, ecosystems like Sandbox that will connect into that. So that's kind of my view of where we're at right now. So we're still kind of early days of the metaverse, and the piping is still being built right now.
I would like to question that thing about where it's heading. And, as futurists, we always look into different futures. So that is definitely one of the ways that it can go. And we also at the Institute, we call it meta washing. So people saying, if you do something, if you have an NFT, you're in the metaverse. Really? Yet? So that is really interesting perspective to hear. What do you say? Yes or no?
No, for me as well. But I do think that we have a lot of behaviors that we're going to see in the metaverse going forward. And especially what I think is really interesting and see how we're doing in training, education, treatment, where we really see the benefits for humanity. So I think that we will see a lot of those behaviors that we're starting with now. They're going to be mainstream in a couple of years.
And we're going to dive into the future in just a bit. So it's just about knowing whether the metaverse is here already. So the last, Amy Peck, what do you think?
So I am going to respectfully disagree and say that it is here. An version is here, and just because a certain company changed their name to Metaverse does not mean that the Metaverse just fell from the sky. 3D environments have existed. Second Life is a Metaverse. Roblox is a Metaverse. Games are a Metaverse, right? And so are we at the Metaverse that we dream of? No. But the metaverse is not a place or a thing. It is a journey, right? That we're going to be building this and evolving this over the next decade and beyond.
I'm so happy that you answered yes, because it would be so boring if all of us here would just think, nah, it's not here yet. So it's interesting to see, because I don't believe it's here yet. So, but it's, depends on how you define it. And as you also say, it's not what it's going to become.
Right.
And that is what we're going to dive a little bit into now then. So before we dive into that, I'd actually like you to name one of the best examples on how the move towards the metaverse, or in your case, already in the metaverse, is affecting businesses right now. Because I think that's something we all want to know, like how does it affect our businesses, right? And now I'm going to start on the other side.
You start with me.
There.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the metaverse for business, if you just distill it down, is a digital twin. And, we talk a lot about smart cities. We don't get to smart cities without digital twin, which enables smart buildings, which then enables smart cities. And so for me, it's the data layer. We're going to have a digital twin of the entire world. People call it the AR cloud, spatial computing. It doesn't matter what we call it. It is a digital twin of the entire planet that allows us to anchor data in a particular space. And so we're starting that now. And so a business now can build a digital twin of their manufacturing line, put an AI behind it, and build what's known as closed loop optimization. So in other words, the AI constantly monitors the productivity metrics and then will spit out ways to improve production. And that is incredibly valuable and has incredible ROI for companies.
Thank you. And
I'm going
Emma?
to give you one example that we have done where we can really see return on investment from day one. So we're working with a municipality in Sweden where it can take up to 5 years before you get the sufficient training for lifting elderly people. Because there's a huge turnover, you need to take 3 people out of work to be able to do this lifting training. So instead, we built a virtual reality simulator where you can train this from wherever you are, instead making sure that 1,700 people can do the training within a year instead. So really, to solve real problems that we're seeing, I love and I think that's where we can see the real return on investment now, where we are in the metaverse.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what you said, is the training element has really blown my mind. I sat down with a company called Vario, who has one of the best VR headsets I've seen out there. And what they're doing is putting people in these headsets within helicopter pilots to be able to get their 10,000 hours without actually having to fly helicopter, essentially. So that is cutting down from the time they actually have to go through that process, get in a helicopter, and think of all the gas and resources and time that you have to put into going to the airport, getting in a helicopter, and actually going through those training hours. Through Vario, they're able to actually hop in the headset in the comfort of their own home and get that training experience and get those reps. I'm also seeing it in medical training, so being able to get doctors and surgeons to be able to get those reps in training within the surgical realm as well, and also kind of getting a sense of their environment before they hit the OR. So that's incredibly important, and getting that tactical feedback of, hey, I feel like I'm going through this process, I'm operating, and they actually get that experience, and that could cut down on multiple hours of time, days, and be able to help a lot of these surgeons be able to get that training that they need. So it also cuts down on some of the complications with surgeons, because oftentimes they're actually training on real humans. So that's really where I see the metaverse heading, and the training aspect really compels me.
Thank you. And I sort of noticed, obviously, since you work, all of the three of you, in the 3D and XR space, that you're not mentioning the whole sort of infrastructure with the digital assets so much. But I know it's also a huge part of what you work with, because that's definitely also part of the development of the metaverse that we can see being affected right now. And I know that there is a session tomorrow diving a little bit more into that, and for instance, in the fashion industry as well. So check that out if you're here tomorrow as well. So let's go to the future. So 10 years, we're going 10 years into the future. Stop thinking about the technologies that you have now. This doesn't matter. It's all about the direction it's heading. So in a future perspective, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and potentials for people that are here today? What should they be aware of? So maybe you start, Emma.
Well, I think that to what both Amy and Dan said, with working with digital twins to be able to streamline productions, training, educations, the way that we can democratize information in whole new ways, I think that it's going to be almost crucial for businesses to step into the metaverse and to see the opportunities that lies there. Because if companies adopt these technologies, they're going to be ahead of the competition in so many ways.
Could you give an example? I'm like throwing something in here. Could you give an example of how it will look in 10 years? What way where you see like some of the companies that you're working with, they're really, they're gaining traction and really working, taking it all in
just
there?
What we can see right off now, for example, companies using virtual reality to train their staff, they're saving 80% of their costs just from 1 year, and they have a retention of 70%, and they're reducing work-related injuries with up to 45%. So all of those things, you're also learning the company from inside out. You're learning your staff on how we're going to operate inside the metaverse through these technologies, then you're even learning the things that you need to do for work, but you're also training your staff in how we're going to operate in the future.
Amy.
Well, I think one of the biggest opportunities is around some of the infrastructure and some of the tools to seamlessly move assets between worlds. And so if you're a startup founder and you're looking at, where the space is going, I think there's many, many touch points and paths, but one is around optimizing those. Wow. Sorry about that.
That's him.
Optimizing those, oh, please come back. No. Optimizing those assets. The other is around very much human factors. The thing that I think a lot of us are missing is that we're all up here now predicting where this is going to go. The beauty of the technology that we have at our fingertips now, of which the metaverse is just one part, but you think about AI and blockchain, which are all very, very important in combination for how we build the future. It's that we all have agency in what the future is going to be. And so instead of us saying, well, this is what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen, let's approach it from a want basis and a human perspective. What would we like the next decade to look like? Because this technology can get away from us very quickly, especially AI. And we've seen the dangers of what can happen when YouTube is filled with AI fails. Some of them are very funny, some of them are a little scary. But I think it's on us in aggregate. We have a lot of power as consumers to demand that, for example, we have self-sovereign identity and we take control of our data back. So if you're working on something around KYC, extend it. Know your customer on blockchain and identity. Extend that to be an interface, a simple interface for us to manage our data. Right? And so I think both of those paths around 3D assets and 3D environments is one path as a startup or an investor. And then, identity and solving that, the ability for us to be able to manage our data is another great path.
It's really interesting with the whole idea of managing your own data, owning your own data, and all these identity issues. How do you think? Now, you said that we're predicting up here. I don't think any of us are actually predicting. We're just thinking into different futures, right? And trying to imagine how it might be. But how? Do you think it's very plausible that we will go into work into that kind of owning our own ID on a virtual stage?
I mean, that, to me, it's an imperative, right? Unless you want to be a digital lab rat. We already have recognized now that we've given away our data to big tech. And some of it's been great. Some of it has actually made our lives easier because we're getting better content. We're seeing the things that we want. But there's a nefarious component to this that, with eye tracking and with body tracking, that is medical data. And that in the hands of, corporations who are not responsible and not transparent, they can actually, the level of manipulation that can occur, because they can understand when you see a piece of content, how your pupil reacts, tells them more information than sometimes you're even conscious of. So that can be very simply, reverse engineered to manipulate us into belief systems. And we've seen that with, I'm not going to name names, but there are movements where people have gone a little bit beyond the pale in what they believe is the truth.
And so you're already jumping into the next phase where we're going to look into the challenges and threats that are coming, because obviously this is very closely related. So every time we can see a potential, there's also a bit of a threat there because it's powerful tools, right? So the VR, AR, XR, the virtual worlds, it's a very empathy machine, it's called as well. So it's something that you can really use for either good or unfortunately also bad. And we have to get these questions right. We have to work into these things. So over to you. Remember the pros. What are the,
So 10 years from now, like what my prediction is, I really think that
opportunities and potential.
Opportunities and potential. So I really see the opportunities around changing our everyday lifestyle. Instead of looking down at our phones every day and just being caught in the digital landscape, we could actually be looking through our glasses in augmented reality. This coming year in 2023, Apple is set to be joining the ranks of Meta and some of the other players out there with their VR AR headset. And that's going to get them into the foray of getting this in front of consumers, the everyday user. It'll take some time to build up to that, much like the iPhone did. But we will get to a point where Apple will get to that AR glasses side of things, and that's really where I get excited, is the real metaverse, the real world metaverse, essentially, where I could walk around the world and see digital overlays kind of enhancing the world around me, being able to show me the map on the ground, pointing me in the direction where I need to go. And then when I want to switch into virtual reality metaverse mode, I could actually just toggle that on my glasses, hop into the metaverse, and actually sit on the couch with my good friend from Bali and be able to explore together, play a round of golf on the moon together. I really feel it's going to change our everyday habits. And a lot of people say that the metaverse, like, we're going to get stuck in the metaverse and we're going to only want to live in the metaverse. But I don't think that's the case. It's just going to replace the time that we sit in front of screens. So Matthew Ball puts it really great. It's just going to replace our time in front of a television. A lot of people still watch TV. And you think of it, or people, even Gen Z, they're looking at TikTok videos all the time. So it's just going to replace, sort of that that time that we kind of waste in front of our laptops or TV screens, and we're going to be using it for a few hours a day. But I do think augmented reality will permeate through our lives more on a daily basis, but it's not going to be something that is in our faces the whole time. You'll have the ability to just turn off like you do with your cell phone, right?
I really like that thing about turning it off. So you heard about augmented reality, but diminished reality is also a thing, like actually taking things away, taking noise, like noise canceling, headphones and all these things, like remove stuff that's not relevant to you. So you'll have a curated life, right, in the future. If we go 10 years from now, I think that's really fascinating and scary. Now I go into the threats as well. And also, one of the things that we're doing at the Institute, just so you know, if you're interested in these futures, we're going to dive a little bit more into some of these uncertainties and assumptions and see if we can gather some consensus from different experts around the world in a Delphi study we're doing for the next half year. So you are all invited to join. I hope I can say that already, but we're definitely going to have some expert insights looking into these issues. All right, let's go there. Let's go to the biggest threats and challenges of the metaverse. Is there anybody who would like to start diving into this dystopian?
I could just start with a small thing that I'm a bit worried about, and that we're not learning, that the new generation of people won't learn how to communicate, probably. I'm an ex-gamer and also a minority in the gaming industry, since there's a lot of men. And to be harassed in the metaverse is much worse than being harassed online, for example. So I'm a bit afraid that we're building something that isn't for the greater good of all people, that it becomes not a safe place. And I feel that we need to lift that discussion and make sure that more women, more people from different backgrounds gather and build this. Because,
I actually think that's an opportunity, because we actually have we're kind of in the third inning of how this will play out, so we can actually help shape the landscape of the metaverse that we want to live in and we want to work through. And we can sort of kind of ignore and kind of look at some of the societal issues that we have in real life and look at how do we reshape the way we look at it in the metaverse. So I think there's a really great opportunity to be able to create these diverse ecosystems and create these new communities and create something that's more inclusive to all, rather than just siloed groups of folks within the metaverse.
Have you heard about Kami? Do you know Kami? She's a virtual influencer. So there are synthetic influencers coming up all the time, like Michaela, Immigram. You can follow them on Instagram and other social media. Kami, she's actually made out of 300 young children with Down syndromes. So she's sort of, because people don't feel like they belong in these spaces. So how do you include people who are not naturally the ones that are being selected? Like TikTok has an algorithm that picks pretty people, as opposed to not so pretty people. So how can we make sure that these spaces make everybody feel like they belong? I think that's a hugely important issue.
Yeah. No, and I think it also kind of goes back to identity, because when you think about my sister and I used to make fun of my mother because she'd be screaming at us, like her temples like throbbing, and then the phone would ring and she'd be, hello, and it's something we do, right? We sort of change our behavior based on the environment that we're in. We have, both an opportunity and a little bit of a threat in being able to project any version of ourselves, but then that immediately opens the door to deep fakes and this idea of what is real. So, we've kind of moved from, can you hear me now, to, is this real? And, you combine that with fake news, and then if we allow ourselves to become those digital lab rats, then we have the manipulation component. There's an ability for this centralized function to completely manipulate the population, right? Because they have all the assets. So that's why it is important, the decentral construct. And by the way, we're not going to move to a completely decentralized construct. Web 1, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, was decentralized. Then we had centralized. We're going to have sort of a hybrid, at least for a long time, right? Because we can't just deconstruct these centralized databases and where all the information lives today. So, the promise is, how do we bridge those two, move from, a centralized construct to a decentralized construct, but then really, again, I can't stress enough how important it is for us to demand our data back. And we can actually, instead of even just selling our data, which I think is a very 1.0 construct, and thinking about it, is how do we get better value? And that value starts to become a one-to-one relationship between the vendor and the buyer. And that can be a brand, that can be just two, in the creator economy, it can be a creator and a buyer. But value is defined by those two people, and then use identity to be able to prove who you are, and your wallet and your 900 words to, keep that secure. But you can see that, this path is a world of opportunity, and immediately parallel is a deep, dark abyss of despair. And so we need to make sure that we pave that happy, shiny, golden road. And we have the ability, all of us, but we all have to do a little bit of work to demand that is the road that we're building.
So on that note, now we're going to go into a little bit more of what can you use it for as startups or investors, right? Because what can you do now? How do you sort of start entering it the good way, being aware of all the challenges, being aware of all the potentials, being aware of where it is right now, whether it is here or not? So what is your best advice that you can give to people out here that they can take with them home and work on right now?
I think people need to get started right now, no matter what sort of industry or business that you're in. This is going to shape our computing. It's going to shape our lives. It's going to change the way we look at the internet. So I think this is a really great learning education time to be able to just look at how you can be a part of the metaverse and look at how you can contribute to the community, because we're still in the early days of how this will play out. This will be, from what I've heard from a bunch of folks, this will be bigger than the world economy at probably by 2030. That's what folks are saying. So there's a huge opportunity to play a major part of this, whether you're a retail, e-commerce brand or a fashion brand. Things are going to shift, and if you don't really understand this technology and integrate it now, you're just going to fall behind as a business. So I would definitely recommend picking up the book by Matthew Ball, How the Metaverse Will Revolutionize Everything. That's probably the best sobering kind of book that I've read about the metaverse, and it hits on a lot of the various points of how this will kind of permeate into our daily lives and how it'll affect businesses moving forward. So highly recommend that. And the other piece of advice is, don't hold your cards close to your chest. Collaborate, because this is a new industry. This is something where we can help shape the future. It's not about, just helping your own company. It's about building an industry and an ecosystem, and it's going to take all of us to get there. So I really feel like a lot of the innovators, the creators in this space haven't even started in this space yet. So there's a real big opportunity in the metaverse.
I mean, I look at this like we're entering a technical renaissance, probably the biggest renaissance that we have yet to have done. And we're going from a 2D screen where we have been very locked and very prohibited from expressing ourselves, I think. And we're entering a 3D space where that is our natural state. So I would just encourage everyone to kind of think big and start small and test often. But to Dan's point, just go ahead, because otherwise you're not going to be in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it really is, again, we have an opportunity to be market makers. It's not even just about solving problems anymore as a startup founder. It's about really being visionary. And it's one of the things that we're best at as humans is what I like to call volumetric thinking, right? Which is our ability, and where we will always beat machines, at least in our lifetime, is that we can take completely disparate thought and pull them all together and create something from nothing. And it's going to be a long time before we can train AI to do something like that. So as founders, as investors, and business people, it's like, think about how you personally want to live over the next 20 years. Like, if you could just wave a magic wand and you're 20 years from now, and guess what? 20 years from now, you're not 20 years older, right? We've got the chip. We can be any age we want. We can speak multiple languages. But what do you want that to look like? Then take that vision back and look at all of this technology that we have at our fingertips and build that road. And you'd be amazed when you do that exercise how much fun it is. Because we forget, we're very busy doing our day-to-day and the things that we have to do. So we forget how to create not only the things that we want to do, but the things that, what if we could do anything? What would that look like? And we don't actually take the time to do that. And that is where the kernel of the greatest companies of the future are, and how the companies that haven't even been born yet are going to knock out some of the companies, the Fortune 500, because more than half of the Fortune 500 that are in there today are either going to be gone completely or they're going to be out of the Fortune 500, and they're going to be replaced by some of you. So get cracking.
I love that. That is totally also our way of looking into go to the future and see how you can backtrack the way that you want to go. So this is really amazing. And I think also thinking about it in a long-term perspective, right now a lot of companies, I think, are thinking about this in a PR marketing department. Try and take it out of there. Try and see if you can look at it in a more strategic way of where we're heading. I think that would be at least also one of my advices to you. One last question, and then we maybe have time for a question. No, we don't have time for any questions. If you want to ask any questions, we will be available afterwards, probably in the garden with a cold drink of some kind. But please go ahead and ask. The people who are here all want to talk, all want to share your knowledge, right? So go ahead and grab us. All right, last final question then from me. Do you believe that there will be a bubble soon? And are we in a bubble, or will the bubble burst like it did in 2001 with the metaverse?
Well, we saw the crypto bubble pop, and we're going through a global recession right now, I believe. So I think that's already sort of happened. And within the VR, AR, metaverse ecosystem, we've seen a lot of difficult times. We've seen some desert periods, but I actually think right now we're seeing more investments going into the metaverse than we've ever seen. It's only going to ramp up, and once Apple comes out with their headset and it shows like most of these big companies are basically betting the farm on this technology. You look at Meta, you look at Google, you look at Apple now. This is where it's headed. So we're seeing that shift. So once Apple gets into the game, I think that's going to really change everything, and we're going to see new players even pop to the surface. So I think we're going to probably see maybe a couple more dips, but I don't I don't know if it's going to pop, to be honest.
What do you think quickly? I know we don't have much
would
time.
say,
I can see that there's like a stage.
They're going to say no, but I would say yes. And there's really simple criteria. If there is false scarcity involved, like a lot of the NFT drops, they're not really adding value. It is just creating a false market that lives within its own bubble. That is one of the kind of primary criteria. And if it really doesn't add value. Right? If something is just, the value is through a marketing campaign or through a lot of the shenanigans that are going on with NFTs where they're being falsely elevated and then they're used as asset and they're pulled off the market, that is definitely going to pop, right? But we're going to figure out security mechanisms to be able to, buoy consumers so that doesn't happen. But again, we have all this technology at our fingertips. So the opportunity, I think, far outweighs, even if there is a crash, we're seeing a huge correction in cryptocurrency. I think that will come back. Hold on to your Bitcoin. But again, adding value and creating the brave new world. Like it sounds like, oh, I'm being very lofty, but this is the opportunity, and this is an incredible moment in time, right? This is a revolution and an evolution, and it's up to us on how it evolves from here.
Exactly. On that note, that was an excellent way to end it. Thank you so much for joining in on that session and sharing your knowledge. It's a true honor to have you here on stage as well. And please give a big hand to our panel. And thank you very much.
Thank you.